Welcome back to another episode of Bourbon Lens with Jake and Scott. Today we're back in the office, aka the basement, joined by Steve Coomes, Director of Programming for the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. You might know Steve from other things like writing and just being all about the bourbon world. So, Steve, we're glad to have you here in my basement, drinking some whiskey and talking Kentucky Bourbon Festival.
Glad to be here, guys. Thanks for inviting me.
It's been a long time coming. I remember sitting down for Steve Nally's 50th anniversary. We were sitting at the same table and I was like, Steve, we need to get together. Years passed, and here we are.
And a pandemic passed.
Pandemic passed, yeah. And, thanks to Tracy and Estes PR for everything they do to make these things happen behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So
great.
It's great to have you and great to talk Kentucky Bourbon Festival again. Like, I can't believe it's here in, 2 months, 3 months.
Blink of an eye, it'll be here.
Yeah. So you've been a part of this renaissance that is Kentucky Bourbon Festival over the last 3 years with Randy Prossi. What's it like to see KBF completely change over the last few years?
Well, it's a fulfillment of a wish for a lot of people, including myself. The last one that I was involved in, I was helping out Michael Manget, who was the head of tourism in Bardstown at the time. Now he's the head of the state tourism. And he was, the Bourbon Festival was thrust upon him about 6 months before it happened. So he had to figure out how to make it go. And he said, can you help me out with some programming? And I got a really close-up look at what was going on there. I thought, this is way below its potential. Not to mention that there was no bourbon to be had outside of the Rotary tent. And it sounds kind of trite and maybe kind of bad, but I think COVID was one of the best things that ever could have happened to because it forced a reset. Mm-hmm. And it gave them the opportunity, them being the board and the distillers behind them, to say this thing needs to be an actual bourbon festival on par with things like Whiskey Fest and what was it, Aspen Food and Wine, and those kinds of things that really celebrate the spirit that's at the core of it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how they found Randy. I'm sure he's told me many times, but I saw him at the meeting when they announced him, and I said, I have a lot of ideas I think would work. I've done this before. Reach out to him when you have an opportunity, and that's where it started. And the big message was from the distillers, if you don't get sips to lips, we're out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that was going to be the thing. Either you make it happen and get bourbon on the campus and make this a real 21 and over festival, we're not going to participate, because they needed to see an ROI. Mm-hmm. And we're like, yeah, let's go do this. That kind of permission was great. So it's amazing to see where it's come. And we cringe a little when we look back at 2021 and all the problems that happened there, but we figured it out pretty quickly. And I think that 2022 was great, and 2023 is going to be even better.
Yeah, I think the main problem with 2021 was the giant rainfall the week of the event.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, the typhoon that came through Kentucky.
Yeah,
it was just this freaking thunderstorm that sat right on Bardstown. I can remember no rain whatsoever in Louisville.
Yeah.
And Randy had texted me, he said, it looks like a rice paddy here. I said, that bad, huh? And then when we were working outside with the premium education tent, used to be outside, and the highest it ever got was 84 degrees, but it was so humid. It was leaching all that moisture out of the ground. It was kind of miserable.
It was that, and everybody had honey drinks that year too. And so you would be sitting in the premium education tent. I remember watching Sam Montgomery, that was working for Bardstown Bourbon Company at the time. They were doing old school cocktails, and making cocktails from early 1900s.
Yeah.
And there was a trash can right behind us, and there was just bees everywhere. And I'm like,
yeah, honey should be a banned substance.
Damn it. And so thank God they moved Log Still's Gold Rush stand away from that location. Yeah. And the premium education went elsewhere. And I think, fast forward to 2022, just to do a little progression, there was this birth of a thing called Bourbon 30 that came along. So I know that's kind of one of your babies. So talk to us a little bit about what is Bourbon 30 and what was the idea behind it, and what should we expect this year from last year?
Well, of course, that's a little play on words of, Bourbon 30 as in time to drink, but Bourbon 30 is a talk show that I do. It's a half an hour long, and it's on the half hour. So that's all the cleverness that it has. We wrung that out pretty quickly. But we get known figures in the business on the stage and talk to them and ask them fun questions and get them to entertain and give us some insights. And it's amazing what some of these people will say in front of a couple hundred people. Not rude, not, ultra secretive, but it's just cool that they pick up on the vibe of the crowd, the people that want to see this and listen to it. I don't know if you saw Denny Potter and Jane Bowie, who at that time had just left Maker's Mark.
Yeah.
And so they were free to talk a little bit about their new distillery that was coming on. But I mean, that was one of the most entertaining.
The dynamic duo. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Just ragging on each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just no holds barred. And anybody listening, you can go on YouTube and find those kinds of those replays of Bourbon 30 and them just beating each other up. And it was just a blast. I'm like, man, this is my job.
Yeah.
This is so much fun.
Yeah, I get to hang out with these jokers for the next 3 days and just ask questions and peel back the onion. But you get to do that for a living, right? You get to ask questions and interview people. So like, do you feel some differences with like your writing to the interview, or is it a little bit different, kind of reading the crowd and working that dynamic?
I think you hit on all the right points. And, if I'm interviewing somebody for a story, I've got a series of questions that I'm hoping to get the answers for to shape the story. When we're doing Bourbon 30, there's no script. I just usually you can just open the cork, so to speak, and let these people go. It's more reining them in than to prod them to speak, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I have heard since then people are like, "Can you get me on? I'll do it."
Yeah.
It took a little while because we were short on participants last year because it was kind of something formed at a later stage of the planning, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'll do it. Sure, I'll do it." But Stacy Pritchard, who is now our ops director, basically, she was going around to distillery booths and saying, "Come on, do you want to do this Bourbon 30 thing with it? Come on, we need some help." And we were putting it together as as it was happening.
Yeah.
So we'll have some fun guests this time around to entertain.
That's
But
exciting.
when we have Brent Elliott saying, "You want me to do that?" Like, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Just hopefully he doesn't have another accident where he like is walking around in a walking boot from too much cycling. Every time I see him, I feel like he's got some type of cycling or running incident.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least he's trying to be healthy. It's the most important thing.
Yeah, he's way ahead of me on that one.
So with Bourbon 30, that's kind of evolved right from the like Grand Central stage in 2021 to moving amongst the craft distillery section, which I would argue to be the busiest part of the Bourbon Festival with, I don't know, there's 150, 200 seats that are sitting there. What do you think the big draw for, someone on a nice summer day to get there and sit down is? Is it just kind of knowing who's coming up, or is it just, hey, sit down, stop by and see what's happening?
Well, not surprisingly, with that being the most beautiful part of the campus, and there's a lot of shade trees, you'll see people show up in the morning. They have a drink in hand. They've already been to a couple of booths and they're sitting down, and there's about half the area is shaded. And that's the exact, triangular shape of the crowd. And the other chairs are not filled yet. And as the shade creeps, that would be eastward, right? Because the sun's in the west. The crowd really fills in and gets all those seats together. And you start to see some repeat faces that people they actually want to sit and listen to whoever the guest is, and not just sit down and have a drink in a nice chair, which it is. By Saturday was it Saturday of last year or Friday? I think it was Saturday. We had a closing thing with Fred No and Chris Morris.
Ooh.
And for listeners who may not know, Fred No is the master distiller at James B. Beam Distilling Company, and Chris Morris is master distiller at Brown-Forman. And these guys could tell great stories. We probably had 300, maybe 350 people there. Originally, we had planned to do it in the VIP tent, and that's loud and raucous. I'm like, well, they'll never listen to anything in here. And so we had it out there, and I thought, man, this is great. We can really bring it to the regular crowd, and they enjoyed them. And those guys clearly enjoyed telling stories.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing is Bourbon 30 is the way to kind of get your foot wet or your toes wet in what could be in your VIP experience that could happen, because you're getting that unfettered access to hear those stories like you mentioned. That not everyone gets to hear. And that's the beauty of Bourbon Festival, I think, is you get to meet the people that are making the whiskey, whether at the booth or at Bourbon 30 or the VIP events if you pay for them.
kind of pulls back that curtain and allows you to, come closer to the industry that you might just pour whiskey and, not give it much thought, but until you really sit down and listen to the storytellers that make the whiskey that have been in the industry for 30 years or more.
It's a great point, Scott, because our unwritten mantra is, anytime we have a question about what we need to do, it's like, what is it? What is we always say? It's about the whiskey and the people who make it. That's it. Mm-hmm. And that's all people come for, is they want to meet those people, or they just enjoy drinking whiskey in the sun with a bunch of other people who want to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's the attractive part. But you're exactly right in that people see these people as almost superstars, and they want their autograph, and they want to hear a story or two, and they want to just say, thanks, I really like your product.
Yeah.
And they are really, you would think of all the people that want their attention, that they would shy away from that. They really thrive on it, and they're glad to do it.
Yeah.
And to hear what people think.
Well, because most of the time they're batting down the hatches and, making whiskey all the damn time. So it's nice for them to actually see the sunshine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Or not be in an airplane, flying somewhere to some foreign country to go promote American bourbon.
Yeah.
They're like, man, I kind of like being with our peeps.
being right down the road from the distillery and talking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being home, right? And that's what is really interesting is it's I'm drawing a blank on the tagline. But it's like Kentucky bourbon
it's bourbon only in bars.
Yeah, and like that's what it means. And you hear these stories, surrounding obviously, but you get a Fred Noe up there that has only known Bardstown his entire life, and that's pretty damn cool.
My gosh, he's funny.
Oh, dude, it's great to see him make a recovery. Like, I feel like I know him because his health battle was public enough to the bourbon industry, what was happening, and it's just cool to see him back out and engage. It was at the Bardstown collection this year. Him, Steve Nally, and someone else were just sitting around just chatting. And they didn't care if you were the regular old consumer walking by. People would just stop and listen. And it's like, these people have been making whiskey longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
And that's pretty damn cool.
Yeah. And you get that access at the festival for sure.
Yep, definitely. So, one of the reasons we have you here, in addition to Bourbon 30, is the VIP education this year is off the charts. And so when you're building this more curated, intimate experience, like what's the first thing that comes to your mind about how do we get people engaged in this? Like how do you start to build that content list?
Well, we do have some post-event surveys, and people say, well, we would like to see this, we would like to see that, we enjoyed this the most and like that the most, or whatever. And we start to think, how do we distill that to figure out our programming for the next year? And one of the messages that just kept coming through was we want more interactive stuff. Mm-hmm. So instead of panel discussions like we've had in the past, every single one of our events, people will be either blending whiskeys, tasting food paired with whiskeys, making cocktails. I mean, they're going to be up from their seats at some point in all of it. And that's kind of cool. Yeah. It's difficult to figure out sometimes because you say, how do we, we're not worried about the mess that's going to cause, but how do you get that room turned after the mess? Yeah. And so this year we have a completely new classroom. It's called the Brindy. The Brindiamo group is maybe some of the listeners don't know, are a big barrel buying group. Mm-hmm. And they have generously donated quite a bit of money to not only overhaul what was historically our classroom space, but the space for the Bardstown Bourbon Guild. And they wanted to see a place in town where they could bring guests and talk about, do deals, basically. And so now we're going to have that. We don't even know what it's going to, we know what it's going to look like, via the drawings, and it's going to be gorgeous. Yep. It's in what is it? The penthouse of Spalding Hall, and Spalding Hall was built in 1860 something.
Yeah.
It's quite old.
It's old. Like, my dad went to high school there, for heaven's sakes, at St. Joe Prep.
Wow.
So all of that was like, how are we going to use this space most effectively? And that the answer to that question will probably come in September when we see it happen. Yeah. So are we going to we know how many events we're going to have. Are we going to try to turn them like we did last year, one on one side of the room, one side on the other? You do it, you get them out, you send some down the stairs and you let the others come up through the elevator. I mean, there was a whole cycle of how to get people up there and keep the cheaters out, which was interesting. People would come up and, I got a ticket. No, you don't.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I'm literally telling you in real time that we don't know the whole plan, but it's gonna work so well. It's gonna be so pretty.
Yeah. Well, in the Brindiano Penthouse, this will air after this, but it will be unveiled June 17th. So this Saturday, the first look at the Brindiano Penthouse as we record is coming up. So I think we're both headed to Bardstown hopefully on Saturday to
cool
to go look at
you
it.
guys are gonna get to go.
Yeah, so it'll be great. And we just had Jeff on the podcast not too long ago, and then Sam Lacey has just become a friend over the years, and Capital Bourbon Guild there has done a lot of great stuff.
Yeah.
So excited just to go see what they've done.
When I was there, it was Brindiamo Hell House, and that was only about 10 days ago. You know how construction goes. It's just, it's great. I mean, it looks like hell until the last 48 hours. And
It's like a light switch turns on.
Yeah, it's so cool. So I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it'll be cool. So one of the other things this year is you're having like a presenting sponsor, right? So Bardstown Bourbon Company is kind of the overarching sponsor, and it'll roll through some heavy hitting distilleries over the next several years. But that starts the premium education on Thursday night with
Bourbon in the Air.
Bourbon in the Air with the ideal pairing.
I'm sorry. See, I'm in charge of that. I don't even have the events in order.
Oh, come on, man.
So the ideal pairing, and I'm trying to think of the ones right
Ultra
before.
Premium Cask Finished Whiskey Tasting.
That's right, with Dan.
With Dan Calloway.
So we learned a long time ago that people are in town long before the Bourbon Festival starts.
Yeah.
We wanted to give them something to do and give us another revenue opportunity.
For sure.
So one is going to be with Dan Calloway from Bardstown Bourbon Company, dragging out some fantastic whiskeys of theirs. Surely some of the new Origin series and things like that. And Dan's not only got an amazing palate, he's a huge history in wine. So the guy really knows what he's talking about when it comes to his bourbon and how to taste. That's going to be fun. And I classically do a lot of food and whiskey pairings. So I'm going to do one of those with Bardstown Bourbon Company's brand ambassador. I'm trying to think of this young woman's name.
Jasmine Weaver. She's brand new.
Brand new.
Yeah. She just replaced Sam Montgomery not too long ago.
Yeah. So Sam manages the Bardstown Motor Lodge.
Yeah. And
keeping it in town.
What's the new restaurant there?
Tugi's Table.
Tugi's Table, yeah.
Yeah.
So, which is fantastic. It's funny. I stayed there back in March and I thought, that's pretty pricey and blah, blah, blah. But when you come home from being on the trail, on Bourbon Trail, and you can walk 50 feet to your restaurant, that's awesome. And you start to think, this is why this is a little bit more expensive, because you have this convenience of a truly fantastic restaurant and bar to go to.
They got the pool, and they got the fire pit area, the common area, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and just that's always been the big bugaboo about Bardstown is there's not enough places to stay. So that being like kind of overhauled and then having this new restaurant is big, because
I think it's great.
It's the hardest part is, do you stay in Louisville and come to the Bourbon Festival, or do you find something locally? I mean, Log Still's done everything they can to put properties, together, but there's still lack of hotels, and more will be built. I'm sure of it. But right now that's great to see that kind of come into full swing as we get ready for one of the largest events that happens in Bardstown.
Right. And my guess is that will increasingly be driven by distilleries.
Yeah.
Who, want that full experience and want the control of it. And I think it's great. I mean, who wouldn't want to have a hotel room or a Airbnb on a distillery property? I think it'd be kind of fun. Smell that all night.
Oh, give me mash.
Just mash in the morning.
Just mash in the morning, baby. Just can you put that as my slop on my oatmeal instead of oatmeal?
So here's the geezer story of the podcast. My grandparents' house still is there. It's the very last house on Cathedral Manor on the way to Barton. Not a great house. Don't go look at it and just say, "Wow, man, that's really disappointing." But when I was a kid, 4, 5, and 6 years old, and you're playing outside, I'm thinking, what is that awful smell? What was mash?
Yeah.
And I guess I could remember. I'm probably fooling myself thinking I could, read Barton and understand what it meant. But 40 years after that, when I came back from my first tour of Barton, it's like, this is awesome. This smells great. This is Bardstown cologne, man.
Yeah. Oh, man. They need to bottle that stuff up. Jackie's Icon has tried to do that with her little endeavor she's got going on the side. And she's not making hidden Barton products.
She's making a whiskey cologne.
Whiskey perfume.
Yeah, it's Odu Oak.
Oud Oak, yeah.
Oud Oak?
Yeah, Oud
We
Oak.
can hillbilly it up. There's some Oud Oak.
No,
This
So
on the nose, like I had popped the cork and I was like, oh, that's gonna smell good.
yeah,
Poured it in the glass and I was like, that's exactly what I thought it was gonna.
And so Scott is talking about one of the Bardstown Bourbon Company fusions. This is number 3.
Fusion 3.
we're going old school tonight. We have a Michter's 10-year from 2019 and Bardstown Bourbon Company Fusion Series 3. So, I wanted to make sure we highlighted, if we did talk about the whiskeys we were sipping on, 2 great partners of the Kentucky Bourbon Festival that we have going on. So as we move into Friday, the list gets a little bit longer. So I think you said there's 4-ish premium events happening on Friday. So I'm not going to go through all of these. I think a majority of these are sold out by now. If not, there will be
some tickets remaining.
Some tickets remaining. I heard it here first from Steve. I'm just going to pick 1 or 2 that you would like to highlight from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday here.
Well, I want to give a little public service announcement here, in that when I was fiddling around on the site today, I noticed that to be able to see these events, the premium education events is what we call them, you need to put your general admission ticket in your basket, in your shopping cart, and then it offers you those options. So when you're like I was and looking around the site today going, oh, gosh, I can't find it. Asked our marketing person, Megan, and she said, just put your ticket in your cart and it'll show up. So that's how you get to those. But some of my favorite, of course, one of my favorites, because it's sold out in minutes, was a deep dive into whiskey making and tasting with Danny Kahn. And Danny, can't remember his exact title, but he is in charge of all distilling and warehousing and maturate at Buffalo Trace, which oversees Barton as well. Danny used to be a big time brewing executive for Anheuser-Busch, then went to, was it Stone Brewing?
He went to
the next one.
Yeah. And then ultimately Sierra Nevada for a little while.
Sierra Nevada. Yeah. And so here's a guy that built a nearly 30-year long career in brewing, and he goes to become a master distiller at Barton and says, yeah, beer's for quitters.
Yeah.
Go the next step and turn it into whiskey. And I think he's one of the under-heralded people in this industry. He is smart and loves to go as wonky as you want to go. And at some point, at least with me, I'm like, I'm too stupid to follow along with this conversation. Let's dumb it down, Danny. But that one's fantastic.
Also, he's got a really crappy office. He just sits right over top like the boiler.
I hope he's got a better office now.
When we interviewed him, he was like 5 feet from the giant ass still that is Barton 1792.
Yeah. The beast.
There's a reason why they don't do public tours there anymore.
And all you hear is the entire time. Like we had to put a disclaimer before the podcast.
And I swear I'm not pimping my own seminar. But
yes, he is.
One of the things about it, I don't get any commission from this, but I love pairing whiskey in food. I just think it's fantastic. It's an under-heralded pairing. People think too often of wine or beer being the pairing, choices. Whiskey's awesome. So think about that on your own. Just pair some barbecue with rye whiskey. It'll change your life. The Craft Cocktail Innovations by Tim Lay, fantastic mixologist at the Kitchen Table, which is the restaurant at the James B.B. Distilling Co. If you haven't been there, it's freaking marvelous.
Some of the best food in Kentucky.
And they make their pizza with the yeast that is bean product, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's very unique.
Fun factoid.
Yeah, fun factoid.
I'm blown away that Pat and Shane from Wilderness Trail are going to do this. And that's Pat Heiss and Shane Baker, 2 men who own their distillery all to themselves and had Campari say, how about $420 million as a down payment? And they're going to do the 7-year sip, which is a vertical tasting of Wilderness Trail whiskeys led by those guys. And that I think is the oldest. Maybe they have an 8-year-old bourbon that came out last year.
I think that's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, gosh, you're going to have the guys that made it. They stand there in front of you, and they've got stories galore. And they're just friendly. Here are guys who have nothing better to do than go help us at the Bourbon Festival.
Yeah.
I mean, counting their money maybe is the other thing to do. But how cool that we're going to get something like that. Thoroughly modern meals made with bourbon. That is Chef Note Bukayo, and she is Filipina.
Oh, sweet.
And you got to pair that with food. That's going to be so cool.
Yeah.
So you can tell I have that bent. For people who don't know me,
So-
that's probably like everybody. I
You're
used to be
also
a chef.
speaking. You're also speaking to Jake because he loves food.
I do love food. I do love food. You know, we didn't tell Steve this before the start of the podcast. Sadly, I don't know if I'm going to get to be there because we'll have the birth of my little baby.
That's important.
That weekend potentially. So, Sweet Pea is
God bless your wife. Hopefully it's that.
Yeah.
Hopefully she's here.
If we see a helicopter exit, we know you planned that.
Yeah.
It's like a NASCAR racer. They're on baby watch.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So she'll be named actually after one of the bourbons that will be present when Penelope bourbon.
Nice.
Yeah. So Penelope Rose, and they also have a rosé cask. So I will have a tent of Kentucky Bourbon Festival happening at the hospital potentially that weekend. As I have that bottle that I will sip.
I'll be there.
Thank you.
Bells on.
Yeah. Scott will drink the whiskey for me.
Here's something that I'm really excited about. The Black Manhattan, a trio of taste by Heather Wibbles. Sorry, Heather. You know I know your name. I think the Black Manhattan's a fantastic cocktail. If you like it. Some people say, like my wife will say, I don't like a regular Manhattan because I don't like sweet vermouth, which is kind of sour in some cases.
It's misleading.
It is misleading. But I just think that's going to be fantastic. I mean, everybody who goes to that class gets a copy of her book, which is fantastic. So I'm excited.
So tell me a little bit about a Black Manhattan.
Black Manhattan uses an Amaro versus sweet vermouth.
Okay.
And I cheat on mine. I use half sweet vermouth and half Amaro. But Amaro is much more complex, much sweeter. Definitely. There's no sour about it. And you can use many Amari, be it Chinar, which is made of artichoke, or Foro, which is a mixtures brand, which is fantastic, just really boldly fruity, and it's just heavier in the mouth.
Yeah.
So I like it. And it's very dark as opposed to a regular Manhattan, which is kind of maroon.
Yeah. Interesting. I always challenge the bartenders in my life that I know, make me a Manhattan that I like because I hate them.
Maybe a Black Manhattan.
Maybe a Black Manhattan is the way I need to go.
Well, you like the whiskey. You're sort of halfway there.
Oh, the thing is, I love the whiskey. Me and the whiskey have a great relationship. Me and the vermouth have a terrible relationship.
I think the problem with vermouth is a lot of the vermouths people use are not fresh.
And they don't put it in the fridge after they open it. So you've doubly made it bad.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely a refrigerated product. Some stuff you have to read the back of the label or do some research. Your cocktail condiments, some go underneath your bar, some go right into the refrigerator.
Right.
And check the expiration dates for the love of God.
Exactly. That's one of the reasons why I love another one of our sponsors, Scrappy's Bitters. They don't have to go in the fridge.
Yeah.
And they have a million. I mean, they have so many choices.
They've got those tobacco bitters, right?
I don't know. I've not had it.
Oh my goodness.
That's got to go with wild turkey so you can double up on the tobacco.
Ooh, you could really go big time there.
Smokeless drink.
Yeah.
But I mean, gosh, there's so much stuff.
There's so much stuff. Like that was the thing. Like we could go through all of this and
something's going to speak to somebody.
Exactly.
Like you just got to check out the list.
Yeah. And so like, that's the thing that I, appreciate about this list. It's not in one vein, right? Sometimes you go to these conferences and everything is just straight line. It's kind of boring after a while. It's the same people, same conversation with a different crafty title. These are actual experiential learning opportunities. I think that's what's nice about it.
Oh yeah. Do you guys know Ashley and Monica from Spirits Group?
Ashley Barnes.
Oh, Ashley Barnes.
Ashley
Yes.
Barnes and Monica Wolf.
Yeah.
They're going to do a blending experience.
Oh, that's cool.
If you see somebody wondering where I am during Bourbon 30 and when I should be on stage interviewing, I may have disappeared to that.
Yeah.
Or he set up his camera like over in the corner, like I'm just going to listen.
Or just foam core, whatever. Just big cut out of me.
Yeah.
Right there and a little. Anyway, that's a bad joke.
Because they have blended a lot of whiskeys that you've probably tasted.
Oh yeah,
to the list,
and the two that are in front of us, or I mean that everybody knows about it. E.J. Curley, excellent. Lucky 7.
Yep.
What's the other one that's
Off Hours?
Obviously, I don't even know that one. Pennington. I mean, they've done a ton. They made their name cleaning up everybody else's bad product.
Yep.
And now they're doing some of their own. I think it's fantastic, and they're smart women.
Yeah. Well, and
don't want to miss that.
And while master distillers have gotten a huge rap, being a lot of dusty old men, the women are playing a huge, strong role in what bourbon innovation will be here in the next 5 to 10 years.
Guarantee it.
It's pretty amazing. So we've talked a lot about the premium education, but there are some new kind of fun, quirky things happening, like more food trucks.
Oh, thank God.
We're talking food.
We're talking food now.
Yeah. So in 2021, when we rolled out the new platform, I think we had 2 food trucks.
Mm-hmm.
2. And that part of it is because some just changed their mind. COVID was raring up again.
Yeah.
So we had 4 scheduled. One called and said his truck broke down. and I was like, oh my gosh. And then the first day we had 2, then the second day we had 1, and the third day we had 1. It's like, oh my gosh, this can't happen. This year we have 16, I think.
Yeah.
And it's going to be moved over to the parking lot at St. Joseph's Chapel. It's not a chapel. I know it's a church, but there's a fancy. Is it a basilica? Proto cathedral. That's what it is.
Oh man, look at him using all his Catholic terms.
Whoa.
Anyway, so we're gonna have so much more food, really good, high quality food. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. Well, and that goes with your food and bourbon pairing. So like what you could do
is waddle around with a full glass and
you could do that, or
sandwich.
you could understand, like get a list, and then they could have Steve's bourbon and food pairings.
Picks.
Yeah, and so you'd say, hey, if you get your maker's mark,
this is the food truck.
This is the food truck for you. I'm just saying.
I like the idea. I need a couple of guys to help me though. I
Featured-
can't taste and drink all that. So
I
got any volunteers?
Yes.
Featured bourbon pairing.
Yes, I raise my hand as tribute. The Bourbon Lens podcast could be, I can't give you any money, but I can give you my palate.
So here's another important question.
Sponsored by Pepsi.
Yeah. Is Mountain Valley a sponsor this year? Because last year that was critical, the amount of water that we went through. That is a critical piece that people don't understand. You can't sit here and drink bourbon all day. No matter how big your, appetite is for bourbon, you got to drink the water too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
No,
it's gallons of Mountain Valley spring water just pouring.
Yes.
everywhere.
And didn't they do it in glass bottles last year?
Yeah. Sparkling and still. It was nice.
They fancy.
Yeah, that's très fancy.
Yeah.
That's the Bourbon Festival.
Yeah. When
You're
you
fussy.
when you're meandering around the wide ass open lawn in front of Spalding Hall.
That's another reason to take a seat at the Bourbon 30 because it is.
It's a marathon.
It's
not
a long
sprint,
day.
isn't it?
It's a
Yeah.
long day.
Well, and that's
It's a
one
long
of the
weekend.
I would say that's probably my favorite improvement from 21 to 22 is the capped hours, the capitation of the
Oh my
event.
gosh, that's you think it's your favorite? It's one of the best things Randy ever did.
Yeah, like the 9 to 5, because then you get to go out and enjoy Bardstown and surrounding areas with your friends.
Yeah,
And you can go have a nice sit down meal. You're not like feel like you're going to miss out if you're not at the Bourbon Festival till 9 o'clock at night. Like it's nice at that truncated event.
and even in a very practical sense, it saved us a ton of money on security. So we had to have. I don't know what the numbers were, but to keep those guys there longer, those crews there longer, our cleanup crews there longer, it just made the festival so much more livable for the participants. Like the distilleries had people out there pouring until 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
So to tighten their day up like that, everybody, just was so on board with that. It's like, yeah, shorten the day.
Yeah. Oh, and then some distilleries did some cool events last year. Like Bardstown Bourbon Company did the
After the festival.
the party. I will not add the color to that. And then someone else did something along the way. I think Log Still had a concert that weekend. So, there's just some cool stuff that you can do and participate in and enjoy a full weekend.
If you go to like the Charleston Wine and Food Festival, the daytime, all the programming is the hub of the festival. And then everything else shoots out to off-premise events. That's exactly what we want to see happen with the Bourbon Festival.
Yeah.
Is that these gorgeous visitor experiences could be turned into places where nothing but their brand is highlighted.
Yeah.
People say winter bourbon, cigars, and jazz coming back. We're like, as soon as somebody wants to take it over, because the Bourbon Festival is, for all intents and purposes, not going to be doing off-premise events anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, there are 2 hired staffers for the company.
Yeah.
And then the rest are contractors like me. And that still doesn't amount to 8 people.
Yeah.
So Randy does an incredible job of hiring the firms that hire the people that help. And Stacy is going to be doing an incredible job as the first year on the team to get a lot of volunteers. And she knows everybody in town, so it's going to be great. But it is a complex thing run by a few people.
Oh, for sure.
So let the distilleries do it.
Yeah. Just pipe up. So, I know we're getting close to time, so I'm going to ask you one last question. 2023 Bourbon Festival is right around the corner. What's your most anticipated thing that you're looking forward to this year?
Dang, it's a good question.
It's like I run a podcast or something.
Probably 3:00 when we close it on Sunday. No, I love it. It's so cool. I think Bourbon in the Air, that's the Thursday night event. I think it's just fantastic because I'm trying to think of who it was. A woman on our team who said one of the coolest things about it is you're going out to an evening event. You're not sweaty from the day.
Yeah.
You can wear nice clothes if you want. Everybody's in a good mood because it's the first night. And it's dark. I mean, it's just cool seeing something very different like that. And everybody's chilled. Nobody's tired.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
But I love all of it. I mean, every year we're better prepared. This year we're in great shape. And so first day sounds good to me, all of it. And just we have so many good volunteers. People asking us, can we do it again? Can we do it? Yeah, you can do it again. Sure you can. Come on back.
Bring a friend.
Yeah, bring a friend. Yeah. So and just seeing all those people at the distilleries that I see throughout the year as a reporter, but it's always a different situation when they're off campus.
For sure.
And they can hang around and maybe toast it, have a drink with you or something like that. But it's great seeing a crowd come in.
Yeah.
It's great seeing I was in restaurants for 11 years, so I love seeing the wheels turn and the operation of a big party move. And we've got great caterers, great bartenders. It's, all we need is a pandemic or a 6-inch rain to mess things up. So otherwise, I'm excited about all of it.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. Scott, what are you most looking forward to? It's the food trucks, right?
Yeah, I think it's I don't know. It's just seeing everybody again.
Yeah.
I know
kind of old home week. How's that feel?
It's like last year was just a ton of fun seeing people from all over that you see all the time on social media and online and things like that. But like everybody's there.
Yeah.
So
that's 100%. Like that's the one thing. Maybe I get lucky. I get to go. The people part, like it's kind of like that first day of high school or when you come back from summer
break.
Yeah. You're just like, oh, it's all my friends.
Yeah. They're all here and we're all drinking bourbon. Yeah. Wait, that wasn't.
Yeah. So like, that's just kind of one of those things. Yeah. I signed my yearbook, stay cool, see you next summer kind of thing. That's what we need. We need a Bourbon Festival yearbook. Everybody comes in, gets their picture, and you get like this crappy yearbook thing.
A book on the history of it is underway.
Yeah, we'll see. There we go.
It's going to be cool. Hopefully we'll have that next year to release.
No, that'll be awesome. Well, Steve, we appreciate you coming and hanging out with us and sharing a few pours. If you want to know more about Kentucky Bourbon Festival, don't type in KentuckyBourbonFestival.com. That will not get you there. Go to KYBourbonFestival.com. That will get you to the right location.
That's correct.
And if you want to know more, go over to KY Bourbon Festival on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can find all the information there as well. If you want to know more about Bourbon Lens, go over to Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Bourbon Lens. Last but not least, on your favorite podcast listening app, make sure you hit subscribe and give us a 5-star review. We greatly appreciate it. And until next time, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, man.